Welcome to the Real News. What do you have for us tonight, Bob?
Well, I believe this nation has nearly the most asinine policy possible in regard to drugs.
Wait, asinine, what do you mean? What do you mean by that?
Oh, stupid, foolhardy, dumb.
I know what
ignorant.
asinine means, but why is this nation's policy asinine, in your opinion?
Well, we offer huge incentives to those who bring drugs into the nation. We also refuse to address the real reasons people turn to drugs. And while there are many different reasons, perhaps the most prevalent is from trauma, and people trying to feel better due to the trauma. Trauma has been linked by the U.S. government to substance abuse, as well as mental illness, increased risk of suicide, as well as obesity, heart disease, and early death.
So, why don't we try and stop the trauma? Why is there so much trauma going on, to start with? Can't we?
Well, there is a lot of trauma in families and in communities. Of course, those in fighting our wars often come back very traumatized. And one consequence of trauma, according to Dr. Peter Levine in his book Healing Trauma, is the compulsion that can develop to repeat the circumstances of the original trauma. And this often results in individuals placing him or herself, or even others, in harm's way due to an unconscious effort to try to achieve better outcomes of traumatic circumstances.
So, are you saying, is that why dysfunction runs in families then? People are trying to...
That's part of it. A family that has experienced trauma often without thinking about it, imposes similar types of trauma in their family, either against the wife or the children.
I've wondered about that, and you're saying unconsciously they're trying to create a different outcome.
A better outcome for the traumatic circumstances. And this winds up affecting the kids, who will then affect their friends and neighbors, and the trauma grows.
Okay.
However, I do believe that minor changes in healthcare policies as well as criminal justice policies can reduce the number of drug-addicted people we have in this country, as well as the really obscene number of people we have in prison.
So a different solution than just arresting drug addicts and putting them in prison?
Well, I agree that the substance abuse court we have here in Reno is a step in the right direction, but all too often they don't use the non-drug treatment methods that are available. There's Dr. Levine, whose method I mentioned, book I mentioned earlier, has this proven method called somatic experiencing to help people work through their traumas. There's also other methods, eye movement desensitization and reprogramming, which from people I spoke to works about 50% of the time and was designed for children. And when the individuals who've been traumatized no longer feel the need to recreate the conditions of the original trauma, they'll tend to be more peaceful. And isn't that something we'd rather have, a more peaceful, harmonious world?
Well, yeah, I think both for the victim and for people surrounding it would be a safer place for all of us.
Yes. 75% of the children in the juvenile system have experienced traumatic victimization. 93% of children in detention report exposure to adverse effects.
So it's a vicious kind of...
It's a vicious cycle, and we need to, instead of reacting with more violence and traumatizing people again, we need to proceed slowly with each individual, have them understand the trauma.
Break the chain.
Break the chain instead of sending people to prison and forcing them into drugs. Take a step back, use the non-drug methods of trauma, and have the insurance companies and the various healthcare programs provide these treatments and pay for them.
Thanks, Bob, and thank you for joining us on The Real News. Please join us at one of our General Assemblies if you have some views or news or ideas you'd like to share. You can also find us on the web at Occupy What is it, Bob?
OccupyReno.wordpress.com.
Thank you.